Today we will cover THORChain RUNE. It is now 1.5 years since I published the previous THORChain video. We will see how what I said then held up, how the situation has changed today, now after this 100% plus pump. But first, yesterday I got some very tough feedback. I once joined for your interesting market analysis, but since you turned into an annoying sales representative, I'm leaving. And there were several of these comments, thumbs down. So let me answer you all. Yesterday I gave you, number 1, what percentage of coins are currently in uptrend, so you know what the odds are of finding a project going up, which was 12%. You didn't know that, because no one else on the planet, as far as I know, has done that analysis or can do it. Then I showed you where that puts us in a historical perspective, so we can understand where in the market we are and how to behave. Then I outlined the main principle to make money in a high-risk asymmetric return market. This is one of the key mistakes that retail beginner traders typically do, and is probably a mistake that that guy in the comments is doing right now. Then I gave you 10 projects that are actually in uptrend, sorted by market cap and volume, which notably included THORChain RUNE. Then I gave you some examples of how to analyze a couple of those projects. All this for free and in 11 minutes of your time. Then I have also invented this machine that makes money, assuming these markets continue to behave similarly like they've done in the past. Then instead of keeping it to myself, I open it to the public, which actually I think is a pretty nice thing to do. Of course I'm proud, of course I'm excited over this. Then this is the feedback from these type of people. It's not that I don't know what 99% of people want to hear. They want to hear this. They want to hear that ADA, which has basically been in a downtrend since we called the top on the BTC chart on the day, is now going to $100 because the Hoskinson coefficient is in the apex of the Capricorn and the Gemini. And XRP, despite being on the same level on the BTC chart as it was in 2014, 9 years ago, is now going to $100 and will be the future of France. Finance. And, well, I'm not saying that. And I'm not going to say that about RUNE today either. And that's why this story is relevant for today's video. I'm the dad who says that you have to take the medicine to get well. Otherwise you will get very sick. And these guys are like the 3-year-olds playing outside, kicking and crying and screaming, I don't want to take the medicine, I don't want to take the medicine, boo! Then me as a dad, I have 2 options. Either I say, you don't want, then you don't have to. You can go and eat candy instead. Yahoo, yahoo, super happy. Or I still say, you have to take the medicine. Leadership is not a popularity contest. It is doing what is right. If you want the candy, go ahead. Most channels will give you the candy. Goodbye and welcome back in a couple of years when you've tried that approach. Here on this channel, we swallow the medicine. Don't worry, it's just coffee. No CTOs were harmed in the making of this video. The same will be true with RUNE today. I'm sorry, but that's the medicine. In the last THORChain video 1.5 years ago, I did not say that price will be 100 in 1.5 years because Copernicus and the full moon squared. Even if that was what people wanted to hear back then too. You will not get what you want today either. But I hope it's the medicine that you will appreciate another few years down the line. Now we will do like this, which I think can be fun. I will play snippets of the video from 1.5 years ago, and then we will analyze what has changed. THORChain RUNE is one of the few projects in crypto that's actually doing something new. To do that, we need an analogy of conflict. This rune stone is from sometime between year 1070 and year 1100. It says, Torsten and Frögun raised this stone after their son. Vikings were not great poets, and there was a lot of conflict. As you sailed out towards the horizon in your ship, you knew that you had a small chance for a huge reward, riches beyond imagination, but a high chance for a sudden and violent death. Exactly like buying into any brave crypto project that's sailing where no one has ever sailed before, like THORChain RUNE. Okay, I think all of you who have survived these past 1.5 years ago in crypto agree with this. Then there's another very different risk too. The cannon here was put here in the 1600 something to protect the house wall from all the reckless drivers. And in crypto too, there is the constant and often overlooked threat of the day-to-day mundane things like the daily wear of horses and carts, or the constant sell pressure of seed and team tokens, or the risk of teams getting bored when building something that takes 4 to 5 years to get ready. There has been sell pressure, clearly, because price has gone down, but the team has not gotten bored, unlike the majority of projects that were working hard in the bull market and then trailed off, often with the money, when the bull ended. And that has not happened with THORChain. Great work by the THORChain developers. But still, real innovation is what perks my interest, and THORChain RUNE has it. If I had lived at the time, I would have been the Ragnar Lodbrok, risking it all for the unknown. But does THORChain and RUNE really matter? Is this really important enough to be worth loading up our Viking ship and taking the risk? Or are there better bets, richer countries in the east? Let's head back to the studio and find out. Let's cut here. Is THORChain still relevant to even discuss? Yes, it is, because in the 1.5 years since this video, we have not gotten any other true layer 1 DEX that is truly decentralized and can swap coins from one layer 1 like native Bitcoin to native Ethereum at scale. Which shows how difficult this problem is to solve at scale. The base service is still the same, and now we have new functionalities, streaming swaps, we'll talk about that later, but it basically means that you can now choose between price optimized, which takes a little bit longer, and time optimized, which goes faster but leads to more slippage. And you don't need RUNE for the initial gas, which is a common misconception, still like it was 1.5 years ago. Let's continue the video. But still, native. So what? Who cares? We have DEXs today. How does that work? Well, we're using wrapped tokens. On Uniswap, for example, you can swap from wrapped BTC to ETH or the other way around. And to get wrapped BTC, there's a number of merchants, custodians, and exchanges. For example, CoinList has a service where you can take native Bitcoin and mint wrapped BTC. And Binance has made wrapping practically trivial. Say that you have Bitcoin. You can wrap it on the BSC network, or you can wrap it on the Ethereum network, and if you have Ethereum, you can wrap it on Binance Smart Chain or use Ethereum layer 2 by Wormhole. Wormhole. Bridges have a logical error. Actually, they don't work. Wormhole bug, that has been fixed, but there is a logical error with all multi-chain bridges that can't be fixed. I explained this in detail in the Wormhole video. What works is a centralized bridge, which is an exchange, where you always have a manual kill switch. And this is still true. The only new development in this space is the Polygon 2.0 idea with ZK rollups and supernets, which we talked about in DCA with Ivan when I was in Vietnam. There the idea is to have many blockchains that are interconnected, and you can settle things on multiple blockchains at the same time to get out of this security hole. But this is a long way ahead if it ever comes true. So yes, native swap is super useful. This is real. Our Viking was right. There is gold at the horizon. But there's also serpents in the sea. Complexity. If we look at some Uniswap code, there actually isn't that much code here. Perhaps when I'm scrolling now it looks like a lot, but it really isn't. This is easy to review, easy to verify that it's correct. Apparently THORChain is something like 200,000 lines of code. I also know that it's possible to make software work but it requires a certain ways of working and you can't change it too much. You can't introduce too many new features because sooner or later you're going to introduce something that breaks it all. And the hack and the history has proven that it is a sea serpent to take seriously. So this risk played out. Complexity has been an enemy of Rune. There has been multiple outages. Outage both in 2022, halts operation 2023, and so on, while at least there is a controlled mechanism to deal with it in the protocol. And there is another one. Will privacy be prohibited? There is a high risk that regulators decide that Bitcoin and Ethereum or any other asset acquired here on THORChain becomes tainted and that you can't exchange them to fiat anymore. Then, of course, a service like THORChain becomes much less useful if using it gets your account banned, despite you having done nothing wrong. Just exchanged Bitcoin to Ethereum or whatever, with full proof of history on the transaction. So that hasn't happened, but the privacy serpent has indeed emerged at sea and still may have spooked the THORChain Viking ship. So here's the score so far. Exceptionally useful, industry-changing level useful. Too complex? Will it be banned? We have to get a few things more up on our map. There's one more looming serpent in the deep, dark waters. And that's the supply emissions, because if hundreds of millions of dollars worth of free tokens start unlocking in people's wallets, I'm gonna stay away for a while. Then we might not need to worry about which one of these will play out, because price will probably tank first regardless of this, and then perhaps recover later when they're done selling. Then I talked to length about supply emissions. With Team and Seed starting to unlock here, Team and Seed investors elected to lock indefinitely until mainnet is delivered. Main or this planned obsolescence, meaning everything is up and running, whichever comes first. I had a recommendation to the team in the video, and here's a suggestion to the team. Two things. Number one, clarify this, because this is very difficult to read out somewhere. And number two, now it says Team and Seed locked until mainnet or early unlock via node commitment. I suggest to change that from being until mainnet is launched to instead being that it's launched and holding up for like 6 months or whatever. I said it then and I'm saying it again, there is always a risk of a buy the rumor, sell the news event. So don't reinforce that. Don't be the guys who get an unlock when it's launched. Be the guys who stick around, make sure it holds up, and then when it's growing, when there is a big success, then that's a well-deserved moment to reap the rewards. And if we can get that confirmation, we can move not only the mission schedule from this side to this side, and the mainnet launch has happened in this period, and I suppose that did lead to some supply unlocking. Whether it has been a factor in the price decline, I don't know. I don't think they picked it up, but I might be wrong. You can write in the comments if you have more information. And then there is one more opportunity. XHV integration really adds a capability that doesn't exist elsewhere, because then THORChain becomes a bridge between native Bitcoin or ETH or whatever, and a native decentralized stablecoin with privacy features. That doesn't exist today with liquidity. After Terra, next up are likely Cosmos, Haven, which is XHV, and Avalanche. Then I talked about the opportunity to integrate XHV. Because in my opinion, we have multiple big problems with blockchain technology today, which are still not solved. And there has been no progress towards a solution in these 1.5 years to either of them, actually. One is, of course, scalability. Everyone knows that. If the entire world started using Bitcoin today in the same way as we are using it, the current users, the network would stop working. Lightning and so on isn't there yet. Another one is usability, the vehicle for mass adoption. It's too hard to onboard today if we compare with the ease of use that we got to with telecom and internet and so on, in my opinion. But a third unsolved massive problem, which is the one relevant here, is that it's too public to be practical. The internet wouldn't work for anything important without HTTPS. Or SSL. Not for email, not for Teams meeting, not for online shopping, not even for personal messaging. Not for anything important. Blockchain is the same. It needs its own SSL. The fact that anyone on the planet today can go into anyone's blockchain wallet and see their balance and entire financial history makes it impossible to use for business. and a real physical security risk for individuals. Now for clarity, THORChain is absolutely not a privacy mixer and does not hide any transactions. It's just that it had an opportunity here to integrate with another protocol. Can you predict if privacy will become an obvious part of blockchain protocols, just like HTTPS? Or will it be totally banned and all my personal transactions must be viewable to the world by law? I think I know what the final outcome will be, because there's only one of those two that's reasonable, but it might take 10 years for the lawmakers to understand what they are deciding, and the first decision could be a gut reaction out of fear for the unknown. But then, just as I feared, the sledgehammer came down hard on privacy this year, like Tornado Cash and its developers. Exactly as I suspected, this might be 10 years out. The lawmakers today are still at the stage of trying to shut down anything smelling privacy and put the developers of such code in jail. The history of HTTPS repeats itself basically, as expected. So the integration of XHV into THORChain has not materialized as it was planned 1.5 years ago. So then that inflow of funds for that use case didn't happen, which could have been in the billions for the use case of decentralized stablecoins with a privacy layer, where there are still view keys to give to authorities to prove tax and so on. Is it still possible? I don't know. I don't have any special insights. I would love to know the plans there. But wait! There's more. Deterministic price. On THORChain.org we can read, by economic design, Rune's market cap should be a minimum 3x the value of all non-Rune assets, locked into THORChain liquidity pools. And non-Rune assets can be BTC, ETH and so on. And here we can read that the non-Rune TVL is 142 million, times 3, divided by Rune circulating supply, 300 million. And then we get that the Rune price should be minimum $1.42. And then if you go on this analysis site, we see that that matches deterministic price $1.41. Rune today is $8.27, divided by 142, we get that there's a speculative multiplier of little over 5. Looking at today, there are different explorers. Here we can see total value locked, here we can see Rune price history, and here interestingly we can see both the actual Rune market price and the deterministic Rune price. This one shows Rune price now at 1.50 and the deterministic Rune price at 0.57, which would give the speculative factor equal to 3. We also have the THORChain actual website, which also shows this current value 1.6, deterministic value 0.65, and then you can edit the price here. If say BTC price goes up or a significantly higher share of BTC gets locked into this network, you get these massive changes in deterministic price, and if something like that happens, for sure the speculative multiplier would also be higher. Say that goes back to 5 like it was 1.5 years ago, that would give price 25, just to explain how the math works. There are also Telegram bots that create these nice charts, tracking deterministic price, actual price, and many other KPIs. And many other websites as well. This is a very interesting project, so there's a lot of people analyzing it. Okay, now we're getting closer to the juice. Let's see what I said next. So what to do? Now we sit with these things. Can you predict any of these? Team motivation, perhaps we can, but can you predict if the complexity is so monumental that in the end it won't work out? THORChain has been hacked, Haven XHV has been hacked. This is difficult stuff and it's a lot of code. Each time it can probably be sorted out with rollbacks or fixes or whatever, but if it gets hacked too many times, people may lose trust in it. Can you predict how that will turn out? I can't. As I think many people have realized this past year after listening to a lot of end of 2021 price predictions that simply didn't come true, is that predicting the future is pretty difficult. If you can predict the future, great! Or if you have discovered someone on Twitter who can predict the future for you, even greater, good luck to you. I can't predict the future, and I haven't found anyone who can. Okay, so here comes the medicine for today. I'm sorry, but there are no predictive models that will predict the price of Rune in 1 or 2 years from now with any accuracy that you can use for investing money. The Rune coin has a minimum deterministic price if you know the assets locked, but we don't know the adoption. We don't know how assets locked will grow. That means we also don't know how the coin price will go from here. that can't be calculated in that sense. High-risk asymmetric markets don't work that way, as I explained yesterday. My final recommendation from the Rune video 1.5 years ago will still be my recommendation today. We'll get to it in a while. But Larsson, I want to get rich fast. I don't even remember my life 1.5 years ago. I understand that. It's hard to stick to a strategy for years. People who think that they will be able to do that without any process or tool support are in for a rough awakening. But that is where the clue to wealth in technology lies. There are no get-rich-quick schemes, but there are plenty of get-rich-slow schemes. It's just that 99% of people can't do them. They just can't. They get angry and kick their feet and run to the candy jar. While we can calculate the deterministic price, we can't calculate the deterministic adoption. But here's the flip side. How I deal with uncertainty instead is like this. First, I determine if it is possible, reasonably possible, that it can go up enough to make it worthwhile the risk. And in this particular case, that's pretty easy to determine. Is it still possible? Yes, no doubt. Nothing has changed in the ecosystem of crypto. If anything, the regulators are going harder on centralized exchanges than they did 1.5 years ago. The case for true DEXs, which are actually decentralized, have gotten even bigger. This was now in May 2023. The centralized exchange Uniswap trading volume outpaces Coinbase for the 4th consecutive month. Let's conclude the FA before we go into the TA. This is what I said then. THORChain RUNE, if they succeed, will have 3 things that doesn't exist anywhere else in the crypto industry today. Number 1, native cross-chain DEX. Number 2, a predictable floor price on the token based on actual utilization of the network. And number 3, if they manage to integrate XHV, have a stable coin with privacy features with good liquidity, then your neighbor can't check your USD balance while you can still show evidence to, for example, your tax authority using viewing keys. The 2 remaining risks or threats are complexity and a ban. And if the team clarifies that their unlock is not at the point of the mainnet launch, it's sometime after, when it has proven that it holds up, I think we can move the token issuance schedule and the leadership continuity to the gold side. The native cross-chain DEX they have delivered on. The predictable price if knowing locked up assets they have delivered on. But as I explained, that doesn't give you predictable adoption, so you still don't know what the price will be. A decentralized stablecoin with privacy features and liquidity they have not delivered on. That was in terms of opportunities. And basically all the risks I highlighted have materialized into actual issues. The risk with complexity did play out. A ban hasn't happened to THORChain, but bans did happen to privacy solutions like Tornado, which maybe contributed to postponing this integration, which was planned, where there was an opportunity for 1 + 1 to be equal to 10 and give power to both projects. Now, that golden opportunity didn't materialize, maybe partly because of this risk. I talked about the emission risk, and I think that has hurt the price. I don't think they picked up on my suggestion. And I mean, they don't have to. I have no role there. I'm just trying to share good ideas, and I don't have the full picture. I'm sure there were good reasons, and welcome to share any insights you have about the emission in the comments, and I can pin it. Leadership, on the other hand, they did indeed move to the gold side, because I think this project has continued to show amazing leadership through the hard times, with the issues pushing through those and adding new great functionality, including, as mentioned, streaming swaps. That's very simple. It basically means to break up one swap into multiple sub-swaps executed over a period of time. Because if you've ever used a DEX, you know that if you swap from one asset to another, same on Uniswap, you cause a slippage, which doesn't matter if it's a very small transaction, but if you have sizable volume, that can lead to a sizable cost. Streaming swaps, then, on the other hand, is the automation of the workaround that big traders already do manually. You break your bigger swap into many smaller swaps. Then between those, arbitrage players and the protocol itself rebalances the pools, causing less slippage in total. And they've automated this in a very smart way. Here giving an example of 9 subswaps, each executed every 5 THORChain blocks. There are also more chains, THORChain for example, AVAX, ETH, BTC, RUNE. I really try to understand the vesting. This is the Q2 2023 ecosystem report. Vesting will end mid-July along with the completion of the kill switch. The ERC20 and BEP2 RUNE kill switch is due to be completed mid-July. With kill switch they mean that basically the decentralization is completed and throw away the key. And as I showed you in the interface, there's a variety of swap protocols. Here are the top 5 by USD volume, but BNB here is the original BEP2 chain. It is not the BSC, the BNB smart chain integration, because said here that BSC integration was completed, however the network had reached the effective hard cap, and launching BSC involves adding liquidity to the network. A decision has been made to defer the BSC launch until such time there is sufficient capacity to ensure a successful launch. And this is in the Q2 report. Then there's a second big feature added: lending on THORChain. Users can lend their native layer 1 assets, BTC and ETH, to THORChain and borrow a USD denominated debt with no liquidations, no interest, and no expiration, which are pretty great loan terms actually. But note that these are over-collateralized loans. So 200 to 500% means that you need to deposit $200 to borrow $100. Of course there are risks here. You can read more about it in this long blog post, because you lock up more funds there than you lend that you get back. So if something goes wrong, your money is still at risk. Now let's switch over to the technical analysis. This is the video from 1.5 years ago, and I want to draw your attention to this seemingly random horizontal line here at 0.8 on the USD chart. Why is that one there? That's not relevant. Price then was 8, and we were supposed to go to the moon, right? Well, if we jump to today, we see that price touched that 0.805 line exactly, set by these price movements in 2020. Look how it touched that support exactly and bounced. But TA doesn't work in the new paradigm, right? Deterministic price, $100 for sure. Then on the RUNE to BTC chart, I also had a couple of support lines, 3 to be exact, drawn on the previous video. Also set from price action in 2020 and early 2021. And look what happened here. Price ended up breaking down the first one, then the second support, retesting and rejecting. First once, then twice, meaning that support turned into resistance. Super clear signal. Then the third support line held and bounced. Again, these lines are not new, they were there already 1.5 years ago. Then following the launch of new features and so on, price moved up from the third support, facing resistance at the second level, and now making a real attempt to break through this middle support. This is a clean symmetrical triangle, and we can take action on a breakout. But before we get into that, let's look what really changed in the TA picture from that time. Because when I recorded this, the charts actually looked good at the exact point when I recorded that video. 2 things changed. These breakouts that I talked about failed a second time and created a double top. If I switch this to weekly candles, you see clearly how both these attempts rejected into a wick, here and here. This is the signature of a rejection. Then the double top confirmed with a breakdown which actually gave you the exact target. I like to stay on the log chart, and then I found that this often works, that the height of the log chart pattern gives the target on the log chart, even though this move in absolute terms is much bigger than this move in absolute terms. If we switch this to linear, you see that this target measured on the downside here would put us in negative price, which of course can't happen. So the downside target has actually been met already. But of course that doesn't mean it can't go lower. I could just as well have drawn more support levels here and here. Price can always go to zero. The other thing that changed from when I recorded the video is that trend turned down. Large line turned blue, both on the BTC chart and even clearer on the USD chart. That has changed now. The trend is up now. Large line turned gold, both on the USD chart and on the BTC chart. And as I said yesterday, THORChain is in fact one of the maybe 3 biggest projects that actually has legit innovation, and trend is up out of all 10,000 projects. 1.5 years later, no one has copied it, so clearly this project is not so easy to copy, and has proven excellent execution capabilities over this year, and has a real use case that is in demand. There is no way you can predict how this will play out with certainty, how the adoption of THORChain will progress from here, but you can react to what actually happens. My recommendation remains. Now, if approaching this or any other project with huge upsides and huge risks on the downside, in my opinion, the way to deal with that is not trying to predict the future, but instead to react what actually happens in the present. And hang on during uptrends, get out during downtrends, and use stop loss on entries and other parts of the process. This remains one of my favorite projects in the entire crypto ecosystem, and I wish them Godspeed and all success. Thank you, tack. City och Larsen out. Hej då! The basement of this building is from the Middle Ages. In Sweden, we build stuff to last.